Hello fellow wand lovers. Today I want to talk about the upcoming Techter Expansion. Ever since Bouncer Renewal came out, I've made a few videos and feedback posts asking for specific changes. We've also had a couple other classes receive an expansion since then, and we can use those as an example of what we could expect from our expansion. First of all, what is the difference between a renewal and an expansion? Well, a renewal is basically a slight overhaul. Instead of giving the class a new skill, existing skills will be overhauled. Same with certain actions of the weapon, it can be overhauled to change its behavior. An expansion on the other hand, keeps most things as they are, and simply expands on them. We're very likely to get a new skill, lots of quality of life improvements, and/or certain actions can receive extra functions, like a chargeable attack receiving an extra charge stage. Since we're about to get an expansion, and not a renewal, I'm going to keep these limitations in mind. Secondly, our expansion will be incomplete until December. There is a lot of overlap between us and Force. Force isn't getting its expansion in October, they have to wait until December. We already know that Talis actions are going to be delayed until the Force expansion comes out, with the reasoning that they don't want Talis to overshadow Rod for these 2 months. This lets us in for a couple of things. Talis right now isn't in a great spot from a DPS standpoint. It is entirely carried by long-range advantage, and having better weak point accuracy in certain fights. It's weaker than Rod by about 15%, so the devs would have to buff Talis like crazy in order for it to overshadow Rod. And if that's the case, then wand changes might also be pretty crazy. Alright, so Talis is out. So what can we expect in October? I don't think we will see any changes to regular techniques. I do however think we might see changes to compound techniques. And obviously, we will see changes to wand actions. Every expansion introduced a single new skill so far, one which usually improves support capabilities, or a new damaging skill that works equally on each weapon of a class. Now that we've set up the groundworks, let's talk about what I expect to be addressed. I believe Techter's new skill is going to be something that improves support. After all, one of my biggest complaints with NGS Techter is our lacking support capabilities. The skill I would like to see the most is something that improves Overemphasis. Right now, Overemphasis is just an extra heal with PP recovery, and it feels very unimpactful. In one of my videos I proposed for it to receive status effect cleansing properties, while reducing its cooldown by at least 50%. I think that would make the skill much better. It's clear the devs don't want to make status effects irrelevant, like they were in PSO2, but I think it would be fine if Techter is the only class that can get rid of them, and even then, it would be limited by the cooldown. Alternatively, we could receive our own version of element set. This would only be beneficial for wand, but would make techniques a much stronger part of our kit. Something I complained about before on this channel. However, I still think they could improve our technique problem with well-executed tech arts customizations, which are also slated for December. Additionally to this, I really want SEGA to increase shifted Deadband values. Right now, it only buffs party damage by 5%, with another 5% applying only when the enemy is downed. I really don't think it would be a big deal if we raise these values to 10% each. At this point, each weapon has so many main class only skills that playing subclass weapons wouldn't be viable like during the beta. Especially since these days, combat-related arcs records have their own additional main class weapon damage bonus. And if they're not going to do that, give us an additional 5% crit rate for each of those effects. That wouldn't translate to 5% damage, but it would be very helpful nonetheless. It might even make Fixa Termina slightly better on classes other than Slayer. In the past, I asked for Wand Lovers to become a passive ability, and renamed to Wand Impact. While this would make that skill better, I don't think it's going to happen. So instead, I want Wand Lovers to become more impactful. This means it needs to increase our normal attack damage by a lot more than it currently does. I also wish the vertical tracking on weapon action counters, which Wand Lovers provides, should apply regardless of the skill being active or not. It would be a massive quality of life improvement to our regular gameplay. Speaking of regular gameplay, I hope we will receive an extra charge stage for Swift Smash, similarly to what Ranger received. This would give us an extra little bit of power in the few instances where we can pre-charge an attack, and would likely require Swift Smash Type 1 to be adjusted. Currently, Swift Smash Type 1 is only really usable if you're not using Wand as your main weapon. So let's say this overhauled Type 1 only increases the charge time of the new second charge stage. Now you have the benefit of keeping the 1 second vanilla charge time, while also having the option to overcharge it for 3 seconds. Something that the current Type 1 customization lacks. Either you charge it for 3 seconds or you don't charge it at all. And voila, Type 1 Swift Smash is now usable, even if Wand is your main weapon. Wave Crash is in a bit of a weird spot right now. It won't receive Tech Art's customization until the 4th wave, which will release sometime next year, but I think they could give it a little buff now. I think the second swing of that PA needs either its damage boosted, or get Zondil-like properties. I don't quite understand why Twin Daggers are allowed to move enemies closer to you with one of their PAs, but Techter isn't. Crowd control used to be one of Techter's strongest niches in base PSO2. Our Photonic Furies still have the ability to stack, but that feels rather meaningless in most situations since the enemies will be too far away from each other. And if we don't get anything like that, then the second hit really needs to have its damage adjusted, because right now, it's better to just skip that second hit, which is a bit counterintuitive. One thing that always bothered me is compound techniques being pretty weak. They're currently about 20% weaker than something like Pinion Blade for example, while being on a much longer cooldown. And if you factor in Pinion Blade during Blade Fanatics, then they're even 40% weaker. So, I think SEGA should make compounds benefit from elemental weaknesses, as well as reducing their cooldown. This would ideally boost their damage by 20% when matching elements. Currently the cooldown is so long that we are forced to use compounds of different elements, since we build the gauge faster than the cooldown. This whole cooldown thing is just a relic from base PSO2, where spamming the same element matched compound over and over was not only way too easy, but also way too broken. But why is Bouncer allowed to throw out such a big nuke every 30 seconds, but we aren't? This 1-minute cooldown has no business being so long in New Genesis. There are a few smaller changes I would like to see, but other than that, this is pretty much what I think we can realistically expect from the upcoming Techter expansion. I don't think it will fix every problem the class currently suffers from, it's not an overhaul after all. But I do think it will make the class much better to play. Because our expansion is so fractured, I will be making a video talking about it both in October and December. You can also expect a separate video talking about the upcoming Tech Arts customizations as well. I hope you look forward to that. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care!